Good morning. Is this coming through? I can't tell if it is. Okay, great. Good morning. For those that don't know me, my name is Dan Robinson, and I work with Father Jay Fossner in the Mission Student Affairs Division. I want to welcome everyone to this spring's last lecture, as I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker this morning, Julie Massey. It's good that you're here this morning, as it's always good when we gather as a community. But in particular, I'm looking forward to this morning, as I'll always find Julie to be a wonderful source of insight, warmth, and humor. For those of you who might be new to this kind of presentation, our last lecture series is an opportunity for a few of our colleagues here at SNC to think about what might be the last words they'd like to share with our students and campus community. This isn't something that's unique to St. Norbert, rather it's been done prior to us in many other places. Before we welcome Julie to speak this morning, I'd like to share just a few words by way of introduction. Julie graduated from St. Norbert in '87 with a degree in sociology and a Spanish minor, and earned a Master's of Divinity from Loyola University in Chicago in 1999. She played a major role in the starting of the Amate House Undergraduate Volunteer House program at DePaul University, and after that served at St. Ignatius Parish in Chicago. She returned to the college in 1998, when she served at St. Norbert College Parish before becoming the director of the Program for Faith, Learning, and Vocation in 2000. And I just as an aside, I think that program is one of the best things we do here at the college. She took on the additional role of Director of Campus Ministry in the fall of 2005, and since 2011 has served as the Senior Director for Mission and Ministry. She's also married to Sean, sitting in the back here. Glad Sean's here. And she's the proud mother of 3 girls, the oldest of whom is graduating from high school this year and getting ready to go for college. And so she's been enjoying life on the other side of the college fence this past few months. Enjoying's the right word, right? Now, all of that is factual and informational. For me, and I know for many others, Julie has been more than those roles. She's been friend, counselor, jokester, and as I said, a wonderful source of wisdom. So please join me in welcoming Julie Massey.
It is so much more fun doing the intros. But for all of you who gave one of these before me, okay, now I understand. And thank you for saying yes. Well, maybe it's because I knew that I would be giving this talk just 6 days after Valentine's Day that my thoughts kept coming around to love. Actually, I tried hard to resist that. When we think of love, talk of love, our images are so often nauseating. Pink doilies and arrow-packing infants, overpriced bouquets, soulmates running to one another in Hollywood slow-mo. That's not what I wanted to talk about. But I also knew these images which arrive, well, let's face it, these days they arrive in stores on January 2nd. Love for sale with a ribbon and an artificial rose. These images are not the whole of love, the depth of love, the endurance of love. These images are caricatures and commodities. They are not love's truth. And so, in the end, I decided to stake whatever claims I may have to make in the fertile soil of love. To begin, let's consider the call to love tenderly. Somewhere in my tween to teen years, I think I decided my mom, pictured there, was a sap. This, of course, was an unfair summary statement for the woman who wove an impressive career as nurse and nurse educator, as well as the completion of master's and doctoral degrees into our family life of daily responsibilities and rich annual traditions. But we who lived with her knew that she would be moved to tears every Christmas when the college son in the Folgers commercial came back home. Or that each year she would need to dry her eyes as our station wagon pulled out of the driveway of the Kangaroo Lake cottages we visited on family vacations. And that she cried when our nearly 9-foot Christmas tree fell in the night, leaving a living room floor filled with evergreen and shards of antique German ornaments. Yeah, that's what I thought, Clara. Yes. I thought the sight was funny, and perhaps I allowed a small laugh to escape. I had forgotten the ornaments, and so couldn't understand Mom's tears. It was just Mom, being sappy again, being schmaltzy, being weak. Of course, she wasn't weak at all. She was tender, and I had not yet learned the difference. I was accustomed to moving through life with at least the appearance of having it all together. It's not that there weren't tears, they just weren't for others to see. One moment from college stands out in vivid memory. Junior year, I was an RA in Sensenbrenner, so I lived alone. My parents called telling me that my grandfather had passed away. After crying alone and then reaching out to friends, the time came to let my profs know that I'd be away for a couple days, and in particular miss an exam in classical social theory. So I stopped by Jim Benton's office to talk to him. He was my advisor, and he knew me fairly well at this point. As I began to share the news, tears welled up in my eyes. Thinking he was being discreet, Benton opened a desk drawer, revealing a box of Kleenex. That's all it took. Instantly, I composed myself, the tears were gone, business to conduct, weakness stifled. I remember Jim throwing back his head and saying, "Oh, I opened the drawer too soon." That story, me feeling sad when sadness made perfect sense, but not being willing to show it, is just one example of the way I operated at the time, always needing to be strong and in control, unable to grasp my own tenderness, flaws, or complexity, unwilling to hold the ways in which I am fragile. As are we all, complex and fragile. It makes me think of a colleague who so many years ago had wronged a friend of mine. I think that part is fact. There was wrong done, as best I can tell, from my not entirely neutral location. So I had that person pegged. The wrongdoer doesn't even need a name. He who shall not be named because he's so stinking wrong. And then one day, the wrongdoer shared something with me, a poem. The details of how the sharing happened don't matter, but there were the words in front of me, and they were beautiful and kind and very deeply moving. And I thought, will you look at that? The wrongdoer is also giver and gift, tender and insightful, so much more complex than my easy classification. He is capable of kindness and depth. Had he known of my cold dismissal, I would have been robbed of this generosity. That lesson lingers with me as I try to remember tenderness. Maybe my struggle with the need for control and composure is why I picked a mate who does not find it hard to cry. Sorry, hon. Who can tear up just a little bit when describing a really great sandwich. No, I'm really sorry. I knew I needed the balance, the nudge toward tenderness. Sean sometimes wishes his tears would be more hesitant, but I know that this trait moves me closer to salvation. It is one of the ways he is gift to me. And life helped with the tenderizing process. Losing Mom too soon, that knocked some tenderness into me. Remember when you thought you were so in control, Julie? Not so much. Sometimes the good person, the one you love, the one who helps you see what you are and might become, goes away much too soon. And you are not in control of it. Of course, that has happened to others. There are lots of ways that people leave us. And I may not precisely know how others hurt. I may never hear of the people that left them. As Philo of Alexandria wrote, "Be kind, for everyone you know is fighting a great battle." So tenderness always calls, and I do what I can to listen. And life brought children as well. As any parent knows, nothing will beat the crap out of you like a crying infant and a pile of sleepless nights. A year or so before we had children, I spent the summer as a chaplain at Lutheran General Hospital in Park Ridge, Illinois. I worked on labor and delivery and in the newborn intensive care. Nobody calls the chaplain to labor and delivery for happy news, so those were both rough placements. I'm pretty sure I had requested them, full of my sense of competence. I thought I was up to the challenge. One morning, a family called for me, asking to have their son baptized. I went to meet with them, assuming something was wrong, but it wasn't. The baby was healthy and strong, and mom was well. So I asked why they wanted their son baptized, and they shared their fear in leaving the hospital with this little guy in their care. He was their first. They were overwhelmed by the prospect of heading out into the world, away from the safety of the sterilized hospital and the expert nurses. In the end, they opted against baptism, but together we blessed their beloved son before they headed on their way. About a year later, I would hold Shannon, our oldest, in my arms and understand more fully what was going on for that couple. I can still recall gazing into her incredible face and thinking with the deepest of soul aches, I meant to make the world a better place before I brought you into it. 17 years and a total of 3 daughters later, let's take a moment because they're so cute. 17 years and a total of 3 daughters later, the world looks to me to be filled with the beloved children of countless mothers and fathers. And when I see rightly, I look on them with tenderness. Whatever their flaws, whatever their mistakes, whatever ways life has failed them, they entered this world as created goodness, and that is the truth that calls to them always, whether or not they are listening, whether or not I attempt to hear. Beloved is our truest name, and tenderness reminds us of that often. Tenderness grounds us, but let us explore the call to love boldly. Years before I became a mother, I was a doting aunt to my brother's daughters. One of my favorite moments with my niece and goddaughter Claire, who was 3 at the time, but is now all grown, took place in an above-ground pool at my aunt and uncle's farm outside Portage, Wisconsin. The whole family was enjoying a refreshing swim on a hot summer's day, and the cast of characters included my 2 big brothers, Jeff, who is Claire's dad. Some of you have encountered Jeff. That's Uncle Handsome to you. And Tim. Jeff and Tim were tossing darling Claire back and forth through the air, as grown-ups do with little ones in a pool. We'd watch the arc of her flailing body, the spark of panic in her eyes, and then her delight as she came to safely rest in one of the guys' arms, with only her legs kicking safely under the water. On one of the tosses, the catcher was a little negligent. And while she didn't go under, Claire did get a face full of water. She coughed and sputtered and breathlessly instructed, "That was fun. Let's not do it again." But the grown-ups ignored her request and sent her right back through the air. Though she was safely caught this time with no gasps or water-filled eyes, she immediately declared in a voice loud enough for all to hear, "Hey, this is not a ball. This is a people." That phrase rings in my ears yet today, some 20 years after it was spoken. This is not a ball. This is a people. None of us is a ball or any other object. We are human beings, humans becoming. The goodness, the dignity, the beauty that is the birthright of each of us is not to be ignored. And when it is, When we see a human being being used or abused, we must react with the conviction Claire had in crying out that day. We must do this for ourselves. We must do this for one another. This is the boldness love requires. Bold love crosses lines, and I know that can seem so big, so far from our abilities. The love of a king in Montgomery or a mother in Calcutta. It is easy to tell ourselves that this is someone else's work, and surely we are neither worthy nor capable. But a line boldly crossed is still a line, even when it is small and seen by few. I think of our beloved students in the Muslim-Christian dialogue group. The faces have changed semester to semester, but their spirit has remained, let us come to know one another. My colleague Massey and I have encouraged the students to ask their questions freely, honestly, boldly, and they have. Some questions are relatively concrete or practical, as when a Christian student asks exactly what is or is not permitted during a period of fasting. Other questions cause the students to reach a little bit further. One topic our Muslim students sought enlightenment about last semester was the Trinity. But there is a moment of quiet boldness that stands in my mind as an example of a line successfully crossed. It took place when Caitlin was searching for the right words for a question. And she said something like, I don't quite know how to ask this, which prompted Fahad to interject with encouragement. You can ask me anything. We are friends now. You can ask me anything. We are friends now. This is the place we are seeking, not just in a small group of students on a campus in northeastern Wisconsin, but in a world fractured by sides and division, judgment and dismissal. Boldly naming the dignity of each one's personhood, building friendship where there was previously assumption. This does not make the questions go away, but it opens the space to ask them in love. Now, in my notes, this used to be called the bridge. I'm partial to talks in 3 parts, and the first 2 parts of this revealed themselves with relative ease. But then the third part stalled. I'd make a start, and it would fizzle. A coworker suggested something that seemed very wise, but I couldn't turn it into anything. And then I thought, maybe I should try to follow my own prescriptions here. Maybe I should try to say something tender and possibly just a bit bold. If I were to do that, I would want to keep in mind the premise of this gathering, thinking about what I would want to say if it were the last time for me to speak to you, and thinking especially about what I might want our students to hear. So here goes, part 3, itself in 3 parts. Some musings on love, especially for our students. Oh, there we go. I want to tell our students that you are deserving of love. Now, some of you, and too many, if you ask me, are deeply worried that love will never find you. And I desperately want you to know that childhood sweethearts and college sweethearts are not the only storylines available to you. Those are some people's stories, and we do well to take delight in them. But there are many other narratives, some of them with chapters in grad school or years spent exploring the contours of a variety of careers. Some stories with segments spent in service, whether in a big city, a small town, or a country an ocean away. Some stories, and okay, I know this for a fact, can include a lot of things. The stint in grad school that didn't work out, and later one that did. A couple early jobs in a career that would eventually make sense. A volunteer year spent in community with 11 other men and women in their early 20s. And in case that volunteer year didn't include enough fun, subsequent years lived in a seriously great and huge flat on the north side of Chicago, shared with exuberant Liz and flaky but sweet Doug. Those years were filled with plenty of laughter and more than a few great parties. Maybe you meet your life partner in college, maybe you don't. I can't tell you when love will come. I can't even promise you that it will. But the odds are decent, more than decent. And if you release from your worried grasp the future that is beyond you anyway, you may find that today holds plenty of joy and a healthy share of laughter. I want to say something to our students who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or searching for a clearer understanding of their gender. It profoundly saddens me that messages persist in the world, on our campus, in our families, and in our faith communities that suggest you are in some way broken or flawed. A friend once asked, after she came out to me, if I thought God could still love her. Her question was sincere, not rhetorical. And she asked because, I'm a church lady, a minister by profession. In the moment, that question broke my heart. And it continues to fill me with a sense of shame. Not about personal wrongdoing, though I surely bear the guilt of my own short-sightedness at times, but rather shame that the Christian community, of which that woman and I are both part, would put forth messages which caused her to ask if God can still love her. It calls to mind the wisdom of Barbara Brown Taylor, Episcopal priest, who wrote, "Human beings never behave more badly toward one another than when they believe they are protecting God." This God who doesn't need our protection, delighted in each of us as we were knit together in our mother's wombs, and sees in us profound goodness, beauty, and hope, potential to be realized, not flaws to be overcome. That we land in a world where things are broken and we mess up, this is true. But equally true is that we enter the mess marked by dignity and shaped in the image of a good and loving God. This is the truth of you. Steel yourself against messages of hate. Do not accept that hateful words are spoken on behalf of God. As we read in 1 John, whoever is without love does not know God, for God is love. A wise person once said that if you have something positive to say to another person, you should always put that in writing. And if you have something negative to say, you should never write it down. I know that sounds a bit pithy and self-evident, but sometimes things that are easy to say are hard to do. So let's think about this for just a minute. On my work bulletin board right now are notes of gratitude, alongside mementos of people and events that have inspired me or mattered deeply to me. Dorothy Day is there, Tom Foss, of course, Donald Driver. And sun-faded, nearly past the point of legibility, is a Post-it note penned by our middle daughter on a visit to my office when she was quite young. Yes, indeed. Mom, I love you with my whole heart and half my liver. Love, Megan. I can't quite recall when or why Sean and I decided that a full heart was not enough for a declaration of love, but somewhere in our family repartee, we took to adding the spare adenoid or kidney, or as you can see here, a portion of the liver. You need some of it, right? Anyway, beyond the bulletin board in my top desk drawer sits a small but treasured pile of notes that means something to me. Everything from funny Michael Scott Boss's Day cards to notes of thanks for small kindnesses or work well done. A recent note, Alex, aka Pedro, was here. Each note some reminder of goodness and connection, words written down in affirmation or affection. At times I look back at these words to see me through a rougher day. Most of the time I simply know they are there, and that is enough. They are keepsakes precisely because someone took a moment to write down something positive. Conversely, negative things are best left out of print, and that includes virtual print. I do not need to tell this generation that cyber hatred, cyber spite, cyber hostility are on the rise. You know this better than I do. Now, dear millennials, you did not invent bullying, and do not let anyone tell you you did. I can still recall my grammar school playground where I, a temporarily mute second grader, watched in horror as some big kids threw a classmate in the dumpster. In retrospect, I have two hopes. One, that a 7-year-old could be forgiven her inability to defend the defenseless. And two, that the kid in the dumpster is now a brilliant software designer with a successful career and a devoted family. Truly, bullying was not born in the early 1980s when the first millennial arrived on the planet. What has changed is the ease with which we can dip our toes into the waters of bullying. We email, post, blog, tweet things we would never say to a human being in our presence. You don't have to like everybody. You don't have to agree with everybody. You don't have to think everybody is pretty or handsome or hot. You don't have to pretend that everyone's ideas are perfectly well-reasoned. But ask yourself, please, if you would be willing to say in person what you are typing. Really conjure up the scene for yourself. Old people, the language is going to go a little PG, so brace yourself as needed. Can you imagine walking up to that girl in person in the first floor hallway of Boyle between classes when you are sober and saying, a few minutes ago I was laughing my ass off looking at a picture of you because I think you are so effing ugly. I had to say effing because I didn't say PG-13. If, as I suspect, you cannot imagine saying those words to a person in that context, you have no business typing them, ever. And remember that bold love from a few minutes ago? When you see this type of thing online, do what is in your power to do. While you may not be able to remove the original message, you can join the chorus of voices declaring, this is not okay. This is someone's child. This is not a ball. This is a people. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but our nursery school teachers lied. Yes, sticks and stones can break bones, but names, words, they have power too. For good or for harm, for love or for hate. The choice is ours. And now our journey through a few thoughts on love has nearly run its course. The minister in me thinks to end in benediction. May you experience love's tenderness and share love tenderly with others. May love take you boldly to new places where trust grows and dignity demands protection. May you know yourself as beloved and good, worthy of a life filled with love. May your words speak love and compassion into a world amused by spite. And in the end, may you know that the love you take is equal to the love you make. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. That was wonderful. Thank you. And again, thanks to all of you for being here this morning. And if time allows you, please stop by outside for some hospitality. It's just outside the entrance to the theater. And once again, please join me in thanking Julie for her wonderful presentation this morning.